In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Calling the workshop to order, we're going to start today's workshop with a presentation by the Bailey Group. And before they begin their presentation, I would just like to say thank you to them for all of the work and all of the time and all of the effort and yes, the money that has gone into our Tools for Schools program through the foundation. That has been remarkable. And you guys stepped up truly, and we very much appreciate it. So on that note, a very positive note, I'm going to introduce the Bailey Group. Not sure who's starting this off, but sorry, Mr. Brodsky, were you supposed to introduce them?
Set of years.
Okay.
Yes.
And the chairman.
You should have them stand their names so they would.
Thank you, Chair, and I know the superintendent and the chair, and I'm sure the whole school board will acknowledge the following. They said I was limited to just an intro. Can't say much because y'all only got a couple hours, an hour or so of our part, and I didn't want to be here all day, right, Chair? But no, first of all, we're proud to be here, and I know not to steal the thunder, and the chair superintendent may not only refer to Sheila, which is bittersweet here last couple months, and we're talking to Ms. Caracas about she looks as refreshed as I've ever seen her. She's got 2 or 3 cruises planned and so forth, but also April, and I know that's not my role to do that, and we've got April Riley here, who I know we're excited about as well, but does have some very large shoes to fill. But while we've been before y'all as a school board, you know, I don't know if y'all have met Hannah Carter or Allison Prophet, and I'll do that just momentarily, but proud to be here. We think this is a very exciting discussion that's really been a long time coming. When we started working with y'all several years ago, and Superintendent Addison Davis was obviously in that role, we very quickly did what we call self-funded analysis with our actuaries to see with your size particularly, most groups tend to be self-funded. We'll talk a little bit about the transition, particularly that Allison helped with Alachua County, which is comparable in size in that role. But it just wasn't time yet, so every couple of years we've done that. Just a huge kudos, and we'll go into that some today, to the school board for really investing more from a funding standpoint. Y'all, one of the things we immediately found when we benchmarked other districts, and this is hard to tell a public entity or employer, it wasn't that there was bad plans or bad carriers. It was the competitiveness of really what the funding contribution was from the employer, in this case the school district. So you had a lot of adverse selection in terms of maybe some of the healthy folks who weren't on the plan, particularly children. Really that curve has been it's changed, and you're now on the right path. We've seen a lot of change in that over the last few years, to where that dynamic is really changed the performance of the plan. United continues to be a great partner. Y'all had a flat renewal last year, and obviously this year the same from a fully insured mechanism. Allison and Hannah can tell you, usually when you get flats, it means, particularly your size, you need to look strongly at self-funded. There's a reason you're getting a flat, but also your health and wellness program that obviously we're involved with, but particularly Aaron, who's not here, Aaron Payne with United Healthcare, and just really the commitment y'all have had over the years has really contributed as well, but you know, besides just your investment. So with that being said, Hannah has worked with you for really, how many years now?
2 years.
2 years, and resides in St. Augustine and does a phenomenal job. I think, and Sheila, as you can imagine, who's we so enjoy working with, but I can tell you her first and foremost, her goal is to serve the district and your valued employees and their dependents. So if that means being demanding for your partners like the Bailey Group and high expectations, she does that, but I think she'll be the first to admit that Hannah's fantastic, and if Hannah ever goes, then we probably go, right? But she's phenomenal. She'll talk a little bit about, Hannah leads your insurance committee, which obviously your school board member Beth Clark is your appointee there. So you've seen a lot of that. Sorry for any redundancy here today, Ms. Clark, but Hannah will help drive a lot of the presentation. Allison, I know you started when you were 12. How many years now?
15, 20.
And Allison has a deep degree with not only her brother, who's been in leadership as an administrator in school districts throughout the state, including Bradford County, but also leads our self-funded team. While she's got a couple private sector accounts that she helps, with the management of, particularly with Alachua and St. Johns County, Clay. She's obviously been involved for a long time. Nassau has just been instrumental. So we thought it would be a great resource today as we walk through some of this and particularly answer any questions. I know we're going to start with just a little elementary overview of what it looks like to be self-funded and what the differences are fully insured. With that, I'll turn it over to Hannah and Allison.
Sure. All right. Thank you for having us here today. Hopefully this will be informative. I appreciate a conversation, so feel free to stop me if you have any questions. If we want to go to the agenda, as Travis mentioned, we are just kind of look at what does it mean to be self-funded. Then we're going to look at, from Clay County School District's perspective, what does it mean for you all to go self-funded. And then just talk about a little bit at the end about how we'll support you in that effort and ongoing. So really, when you are self-funding, what is happening is you are assuming the financial risk. So it's all about who's taking on the risk. Right now, you're paying a premium to United Healthcare, and let's say you pay $1 million a month and the claims come in at $500,000. Well, United retains that $500,000. Let's say you pay $1 million and they come in at $1.5 million, United pays that additional $500,000. So what you're really doing is the school district will be taking on that risk in the claims fluctuation. But you do have ways to mitigate that risk, and that's through stop loss insurance. And we will definitely talk more about that today. That's going to cover you from a catastrophic standpoint and cover you on those claims that may, go into the hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. So we'll talk definitely about those strategies because you're going to be paying those claims directly now. And then you're also going to have fixed costs that you're going to pay. So you're going to have to pay United for, answering those customer calls, customer service, sending out those medical ID cards. You're paying to access their network. So all of that is part of what you're really paying for, those fixed fees. And then reserves, again, is what is going to happen, depending on how your plan runs. And then you'll also have to account for that in, let's say you terminated your self-funded plan, you're going to have to pay out what happens afterward, but that's all accounted for through your finance and accounting department. Okay. So again, this is just really more of a visual of breaking that down. So right now you're paying that one medical premium. It's going to United, and any excess is remaining with the medical carrier. So really what we're doing now is we're going to take that premium and we're going to split it up. I like to, it's kind of like an a la carte way to cover the insurance. So you're going to pay that administrative fees. You're going to pay the stop loss insurance to protect the financial integrity of the plan and the fund. You're going to pay for the pharmacy benefits. And then you're going to pay for the medical claims. So again, anything on the positive side of that, you're going to retain as the self-funded health plan. So what are some of the components of that? We've touched on a few of these already, but you have us as the broker. So we're going to monitor the plans. We're going to help you take care of these relationships, with United, with, if you have a different pharmacy benefits manager, that's often the case in the plan here also. We're going to manage all of those relationships and then again do the same things we do now in supporting Sheila and her team in, employee communications, open enrollment, things of that nature, anything really related to your employee benefits. You all again, as the employer, again, you'll be in charge of managing it from the financial side, making sure you have those funds available, and you're also assuming the risk. The pharmaceutical benefit manager is going to be separate. So I think that's probably one of the biggest changes from a member perspective is now you will have, an ID card for your prescriptions and an ID card for your medical. So that's going to be, because you have the opportunity, again, you can pull out and get the benefits of having a separate contract with like an Express Scripts and reap the benefits of what that means. And we'll go into that a little bit further later on too. Again, the stop loss carrier, we worked through all that with you all to see, what that means from how your protection should be set up, who you should be partnered with, what kind of premiums you're going to pay. And again, just kind of high level mentioning this, but we'll go into that in more detail. And then again, working with your provider. So UHC, that will be a nice transition because your network's not going to change. Really, from that perspective, it's a background change. It's really just going to be how you're paying for those services. And again, it's more pulled apart or a la carte versus just paying the one premium for those bundled services. You also have a spending account administration, wellness program incentives, diabetes management. You're going to have some fees. That PCORI fee is part of the Affordable Care Act, the patient-centered outcomes research fees that you have to pay annually. It's a small amount, but that's something that will help you with too. So again, all of these things are kind of wrapped up into your premium today as a fully insured plan. We're pulling it apart, managing them separately. You take on the risk, but you also will be able to keep the reward based on the health of your plan. Okay. So stop loss coverage. This is really, claims are expensive now. Medical treatments are expensive. You can have, one of the things we always like to discuss are like, for instance, premature births can be very expensive. I've worked with plans that have premature twins, let's say, that bill might be $4 million. So obviously you don't want to take that on as the plan and have to pay a $4 million bill. So what we do is we work with you all to procure stop loss coverage. And that is going to cover individuals at a certain deductible. And we're going to go more into that. So that covers, all of your people on the plan, whether they be employees, dependents, spouse, covers everybody at a certain level. You pay the premium. Every head has a deductible. It's kind of like if you think about it as car insurance, you have a deductible on your car, and then if something happens, you get the reimbursement for that. So we're going to go a little bit further into that. And then aggregate stop loss coverage is going to be more of a blanket coverage. So let's say the stop loss carrier says, well, we predict that Clay's claims are going to be $20 million this year. So anything over $20 million, we're going to reimburse Clay, and that's over the entire plan. Anything that's not already reimbursed under the specific stop loss coverage, the per head coverage, would go towards that amount, and then you get money back. And usually that is capped at $1 million. So a lot of times when we're looking at this coverage, we look at it for new plans, newly self-funded plans, because down the road you become more predictable in your claims, and the actuaries can do a really good job at predicting your funding and where you need to be with your claims and your experience. So down the road, you may drop aggregate stop loss coverage. You do not have to have both of them. And again, it's really back to that. You can pull it apart and make choices and have decisions that you don't have right now when everything's wrapped together.
How long down the road do you expect that we would have in 5 years, 10 years? What do you think?
Even like a couple of years. I think with a group this size, if you're not seeing a lot of volatility, like that's really what you're looking for. And with our actuary team, we would provide that guidance as we move forward, because this coverage is renewed every year, just like you would your car insurance or your home insurance. Every year they renew it because they're looking at your claims experience. So at that point, you can make that decision to either keep it or drop it. But it is an extra layer of protection.
Thank you.
So this is just an example, a graphic example of the specific stop loss insurance. So kind of like I said, the specific is based on every, per head. So if we have a $100,000 stop loss policy, that means for every person on the plan, the health fund or the board is not going to pay more than $100,000. So in the instance of that $4 million in claim, which sounds crazy, I feel like when I started doing this 20 years ago, you wouldn't have seen this. Now it's kind of common, actually. You're not going to pay, you wouldn't pay any more than $100,000. And then the stop loss will come in and reimburse you for the difference. So just like you see here, we have like an example of different claimants, claimant A through claimant J here, and you can see kind of claimant A only spent $75,000 in the year, so we didn't get any reimbursement on claimant A. Claimant B spent $110,000, so we got $10,000 back on that claimant. So it looks at every single claimant, and again, that's something that we monitor for you on a monthly basis, and it counts medical and your pharmacy spend. So that's one thing that other people are maybe surprised about is now with the cost of pharmaceuticals, we see people hit stop loss that are with pharmacy only. I have a case with an individual that the members' pharmaceuticals run about $800,000 a year. So anything over that stop loss deductible is getting reimbursed. So it can be medical, pharmacy, or a combination of the two. So very important coverage, just like you wouldn't, drive your car around without insurance. We want to make sure that you're protecting the health fund and your membership.
Is that amount flexible? Like,
It is.
You think 100,000 is adequate for our district?
So this is an example, but honestly, for your size, so this is another piece that's actually baked into your premium now, because as United has the risk of your business, they also have their own stop loss insurance kind of as a carrier in the background. So that is baked into your premium right now, and I believe you're at
300.
300? Okay, 300,000. So which is about normal for a group of this size.
Is that where we would leave it then? We'd leave it at
Yeah,
300,000?
great question. I think some of the quotes that were, or not quotes, but when we get specific and
We have some more
school district,
information on that.
and we've 300 is your current pooling level, we call it, which by the way is baked into your premiums, as Allison mentioned. I know we're looking, I believe, 275 and 250 and then 300. And so that's part of the exercise we've already went to market and done. With stop loss, not to get in the weeds, you don't firm that up until you get closer to, in this case, your 10-1 renewal. So late summer, we'd be coming back if we continue down this path to the school district to land on which contract you would want.
I just don't want to think that we're at that 100,000, which is
No.
the example I understand.
Correct.
If that's not what is, like you said, is built in already.
Correct,
So the
yeah.
300,000,
So 300,000.
275 in that range.
That's, yes.
And I would imagine the lower the number, the more it would cost.
Correct, yeah, just like a deductible,
Sure.
that's the easiest way to
Thank you.
think about it. Yeah.
Is that kind of the average of districts our size? I mean, is that?
I think it varies. Normally what happens, frankly, is when people first go self-funded, they start lower.
Okay.
Because that way, you've got that premium that you're paying, and yes, it may be higher, but you know what it's going to be. It's not going to change that premium amount. So I think what you'll do is you'll start lower, and then because you have to renew it every year, we look back at the experience. Did you have any high-cost claimants? Is the difference in the premium worth the risk of the additional high-cost claimants? So that's something that's evaluated annually. But I would say 250, 300 for a group this size is about where you would see it, especially starting with an immature self-funded plan. And then this is just a quick graphic on, we talked about aggregate coverage. And so again, this is just an example that's saying if if we said it's $3 million, we're going to say your claims are $3 million. Anything above that, they're going to reimburse. So it's really like if you have let's say we set your stop loss as $300 per head, and you have hundreds of people with $295,000 claims. That's really because again, you've spent all of that money and you've really not gotten any reimbursement. So this is there to kind of help mitigate some of that. So again, that's something you look at year over year. We always say, I know in the 20 or so years I've been in the business, I've never seen an aggregate claim pay. And generally, it's because you can predict what's going to happen for a group of your size. You look at the demographics. You just kind of know, generally speaking. And I know, Mark that we work with, and I think he said in 30 years, I've seen one pay. So that kind of tells you, it does give you that extra protection, but I think also it kind of tends to get left behind as you get the experience and you can better predict what's going to happen within the plan.
So is that, anything like that already built into the existing plan, or is this an extra layer just because we're going self-insured?
It's an extra layer, yeah, for sure.
And it's a lot less expensive due to the, the low probability hitting. And there's times where we forgo this. I mean, in other words, as you get more mature in future years, you're doing a stop loss renewal or reinsurance, whatever you want to call it, you would forgo this coverage to, and those premiums could be reduced accordingly.
And it is much less.
And $3 million is the number you would be looking at for our district?
No, again, this was just an illustration. Yeah. And I think we have, it's more like 30-something million dollars.
Okay.
We have that further on in the presentation.
Well, I like these numbers much better.
Right? That would be great.
You told me on these numbers.
That's right.
The healthiest group on the planet. All right, so just kind of looking at, what are the advantages and disadvantages of self-funding. The advantages, there is like a premium tax and health insurance tax that, again, all of that's rolled into your premium, but you're not paying that outside of the plan when you have a self-funded plan. We talked about the carrier profit and risk. You're not paying that, because you're taking on that risk, so you're paying for it through your aggregate and your specific stop loss coverage, but you're not paying the carrier anything, because really all they are doing at that point is processing claims, managing your customer service and things like that. You have flexibility in your plan design. So, there's no mandated plan design. Pretty much, if you want to do it, you can do it. We don't really recommend that, but you're not subject to some state mandates. If some mandates come down that say you have to cover XYZ, right now you have to cover it. When you're self-funded, the carrier will come to you and say, do you want to cover it? So you have some options there. Greater access to data. You can really see what's happening in the plan and dig down into the details. Right now, if we want to, have specific scenarios or maybe something that seems to be on the rise in the plan, we can only go so far with the reporting. With self-funded, the reporting is open. Much more open than it is now, but only to specific individuals, and you have to be trained accordingly. So just wanted to mention that, and those are some details we'll get into further if we move in that direction with the benefits in your finance group. Again, you control your reserves. No one's coming in and saying, here's your renewal at 30%. And it is what it is, and make changes if you want to do it. We will come in and say, here's your renewal. We've worked with the actuaries. We've looked at your experience. We may have to do plan design changes or something, but you have really the control over that. So it's just really with that assumption of risk comes also that control. And then again, your wellness initiatives, when you see that, you have control over that experience. If things are going well, you're really reaping the benefit of that rather than the carrier reaping the benefit. The disadvantages, again, risk. We've talked a lot about risk assumption, which is really the heart of it. The claims fluctuation can make budgeting unpredictable. So this is Dr. Legecko's favorite part. Again, we mentioned your claims might be $1 million one month, $2 million the next. You can have that unpredictability, that up and down. And I will just tell you, you can just clockwork with school districts. The claims are going to go up in the summer. Because if I need to get a knee replacement that's not urgent, I need to get a hip, that's going to happen in the summer. Makes sense. So you kind of know that's those seasonalities. In the Christmas break, you're going to see people get those sorts of, elective, not really elective, but more so elective type procedures. So your claims usually spike in December. So it's pretty, again, you get that experience and you can plan for that and there's more responsibility as far as you on the administration side. So again, a lot of that will be taken on by us as your broker partner. Looking at, running those funding rates, you're still going to be subject to a renewal. It's just going to come from us as the consultant working with you and the actuaries to figure out what does that really need to be. Whereas now there are pieces of that you can't control. You'll have an incurred but not reported, which is a financial component. Looking at, again, it's kind of like a terminal liability of the plan, but that's really on the finance side. It is reevaluated every year. It's usually booked as a liability, but our actuaries will work with finance to make sure we determine what that is and that you all can book that accurately. Annual filings that have to take place. Ultimately, the responsibility of proving your financial viability is to the Office of Insurance Regulation with the state. So there's a state filing that's required every year to make sure that you all aren't saying, well, we predict 30 million in claims, but we're only going to fund 20 million and see how it goes. Like that's not gonna fly. So it's obviously to protect, the ultimate. It goes through the state, but then the board, has that ultimate responsibility. The banking accounts and things like that, that's all through finance. You have to make sure that you're set up to pay the claims. They have to be paid timely. Obviously, you don't want someone to go in and get a procedure and get denied because Clay District didn't pay their bill this month. So that's set up to automatically, but that's something that happens through your finance department. And then you also just, again, these carriers, since we're splitting this all apart, deciding who those partners are, working through that. But you have the insurance committee, they've made guiding directions and proposals. They will continue to do that, just on a little bit of a different plane. And your benefits department and certainly with us, we will, work together with them on that to make those recommendations. So now that was kind of just an overview of, pieces and parts of what it means to be self-funded. Before we move on to what it means for Clay to be self-funded, are there any questions, just more general questions that we can help with or answer? That's kind of quick, and I've been doing it for a long time, so it feels natural to me, but I know it doesn't feel natural to most people. So if you think of anything, please feel free to jump back, and I'll be happy to help. Ready to move on?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, so we talked about these pieces. So what does this look like for you all? So when we look at the top left-hand side of the screen here, this is your self-funded administrative quote from United Healthcare. So this is, again, kind of pulling all of these pieces apart. So the payment, the fee is going to be $46.04 per employee per month, or per contract enrolled in the plan per month. So that will be a bill that is paid every month, and that's your administrative fee. So that's on top of, you're going to get a claims bill every month. Let's say that $1 million claims bill, you pay that bill, or it's weekly, it'll actually be weekly. You'll pay that bill weekly for the claims, and then monthly you'll pay this fee. Just as you would pay, again, your monthly, any type of insurance that you would pay for monthly. That's broken down into all of these different pieces that you're paying for. So you're paying for administration and behavioral care. So that is, you have access to a mental health network. You have access to United's network. That's really what you're paying for there, is that network access. The disease management, care coordination, things like that, that's 77 cents, that's paying for that. Simply Engaged, so that's your wellness program, so there's a cost for the administration of that. UHC is your claim fiduciary, because they are going to be making those claim payments on your behalf. That's part of their internal finance structure, the 75 cent. You all have an on-site wellness person that we, I think everybody wants to make sure we maintain that. It's been such a positive experience and had such a positive impact on your plan. That's included in there at $443. The RX integration, because we are looking at using a different pharmacy benefit manager, it won't be under United's umbrella. They're going to charge us because they're going to have to integrate that data to make sure, they're tracking your out-of-pocket maximums and things like that as an individual. So that fee is the 75 cents. Your wellness budget is $4.43, and that's for your programming. And then for our consulting services, it's $2. So you can see that's kind of what all of the pieces that add up to the $46.04.
And to bring it full circle a little bit, a couple things. I know, Allison, when we see Aetna, Blue Cross, other good medical TPAs in this case, right, is what the role they would be serving as UHC would. The fees starting with roughly $30. Matter of fact, it's a little lower than we thought and we've seen, but we feel obviously very good about that. The goal all along from the insurance committee, the superintendent, obviously Dr. Legutko, Sheila, and all stakeholders was to make a transition that was not burdensome clearly to the employees in terms of change or disruption, still with United Healthcare, still the same plan designs. The goal when moving to self-funded, I know we haven't mentioned this yet, is to not have that volatility and go start shaking things up with the way the plans are designed. This would do none of that. And the other thing to do financially, which particularly the board from a fiduciary standpoint appreciates, and y'all know Dr. Legutko would do this anyway, is, hey, let's throw it all out there on how we keep everything currently in place, but what does it cost? And so these items that are baked in after the initial $30 are keeping and doing that in terms of wellness. We mentioned Simply Engaged and so forth. That $46 fee, I know a lot of this may not mean stuff. Remember, it's the different buckets that we'll round out here. You had about a $32 million premium spend with United Healthcare last fiscal year. This would be about $1,600 of that if you move to a self-funded program. The PPM of $46 is based on subscribers, not members. You're roughly hovering right around 2,900 subscribers. Obviously, there's dependents involved. You're not charged the $46 on dependents, it's per subscriber. And then, not to steal Allison's thunder, there's the flexible spending account expense as well as the rally incentive, which we broke out, but all of that is obviously placed within that total amount that you see there. And this is the cost for United Healthcare to really remain as your TPA, use their network discounts. I didn't mention providers. We don't want any disruption there either. So the same provider network your employees and their dependents enjoy today, same carrier, same plans. We'll talk in a minute about pharmacy, but wellness, none of that will change. Now the goal is as you move and see as claims mature and develop, and could you improve plans? Could you pull some levers that, with wellness and different things moving forward? Obviously that happens all the time. I think one thing we've mentioned as I think about it, and not to compare other school districts, but St. Johns County, which I know Allison manages with Mark Bailey, gotten a little bit of a dilemma, or at least in that they weren't funding the plan each year. They were doing well, but they did not bump up the funding increase from either the employee or both. What happened with that is eventually you do that 3, 4, 5 years. While it's good for a lot of ways, particularly for the employees or the district, it can catch up with you and really decrease your reserves. Since then, they've corrected that and started having a nominal amount each year. I don't know what the reserves are, it's 45 million. And so they took some corrective action, not to say that in a harsh way, to really do that. And we talk about a latch one other. So the point being is even when you're performing well, your stop loss or reinsurance typically is going to go up some. Healthcare does rise. It is healthy to
have some incremental increases over time, but the goal is not that volatility that y'all have really seen over the last years. You're on a good run right now, but there's been years where it's 20-30% increase, you're skinnying the benefits down and so forth. So, thanks, Allison. Any questions on this? And then we'll jump, I think, into stop loss, or I think, is pharmacy next? We'll jump into that.
You want to?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and give you a little breather there, thank you. We mentioned about carve-out pharmacy, and one of the real opportunities with moving to a self-funded program, many of y'all that either have worked with various employers or your spouse does, they're used to having a separate medical card, separate pharmacy card. I've got that in terms of the plan that we have with the Bailey Group. I know when I was on the state's plan, the same way, it was always broken out. We did a market analysis, ran this through your insurance committee over the last couple of weeks. PBM means Pharmacy Benefit Manager. The rebates are really where the significant differences are. Today in your United Healthcare plan, not to knock United, Blue Cross and Aetna would be doing the same thing. You're fully insured. Their Pharmacy Benefit Management Manager, which is owned by United, is called Optum. You see they competed here. But in this case, United, or your current program, being fully insured, they keep all the rebates, right? And so when you're getting a flat, they're really helped from a profit standpoint, looking at that profit center, let's call it, and but it's carved in with your medical. We went to, once again, the market. You can see your total net plan cost. We looked at all your current ingredients, all your current scripts that are being filled. Now remember, that can change. Someone can get on a specialty drug tomorrow, but when you look at a snapshot of the same grouping of scripts, you can see Express Scripts was clearly, although Optum wasn't too much more, this was all negotiated, ended up at about a 25% savings. So when you look at roughly $1.74 million, those would go directly to the school district that essentially helps fund your medical program. This is something we look at typically every 2 to 3 years. There are mechanisms within the contract that they're always looking at discounting to improve upon things, not to take away. The disruption obviously is set to be very minimal. There are different formularies that can both be, someone could have a drug in a tier 2 today with Optum, it could be tier 1 with Express Scripts, or it could be tier 3, so there's going to be a little bit of disruption, but typically we see it's a smooth transition. Obviously, if you did move to self-funded, this would likely be really the only thing your employees would see. Not that you're trying to, these are public meetings, your school board meetings, but in terms of being self-funded, they would not see any change other than they would move to a different PBM effective 10/1. In this case, it would be Express Scripts. You know, Allison, you could speak as well to the amount of reporting that we see when we do this as well. Not that United doesn't supply a lot of data, but it's really significant in terms of how you can see the clinical trends and so forth to really help your wellness team in that regard too. Chairman?
Quick question. I just did all of this through Medicare, changed my prescription provider, whatever. And when that was happening, I was looking at a variety of different levels of drugs. They were saying, you know, this is a level 1 prescription that is generic sort of thing, level 2, level 3. I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Express Scripts, Optimum, Welldyne, and CVS all have similar lists. Because if somebody's on a specialty drug of some sort and all of a sudden it goes from a level 1 to a level 3, which isn't covered as high, do you understand where I'm coming from?
Right.
I'm assuming that these are all comparable.
Comparable, yes.
Not exact, I mean,
Yeah,
not going to be
exactly.
exact, but comparable, so that those people who are on a regular medicine that they have to take daily or whatever won't see much of a change in
Yeah,
their...
there are going to be some disruptions with that, but it actually goes both ways. So sometimes be an improvement. And then, but the people that are gonna call, not Sheila, because she'll be on a cruise. Sorry. Sorry, April. You know, they're gonna be the ones, but, you know, we're always here to support and navigate that. Just frankly, I feel like Optum traditionally has had a pretty tight formulary and tight programs on their access. So I feel like it's going to be, because it's from Optum, it is from Optum to Express Scripts, hopefully that disruption is going to be minimal, but, you know, we'll support that also.
And one of the reasons we're not as exact on that, we're not trying to be vague on disruption. You want to talk a little bit about the files when they're moving from fully insured to self-funded, the level of data we're able to get in terms of.
Yeah, so really as a fully insured plan, you don't have access to the detailed data. So once you are self-funded, or if you choose that route, and let's say we choose Express Scripts, then we have all of the data. So when we look again, we might be able to even hone in on this even more, because right now as fully insured, that is not your data. It is United's data. So they can give us kind of what they want to give us, or, you know, there are some things they have to, but pretty much it's up to them. So we had to, you know, kind of work with what we had. You see on here like admin fee, unknown, rebates, unknown, but they're not going to tell us that. So, you know, we'll definitely have that access and a greater breadth of what's happening within your plan specifically as we move forward.
We actually feel this is pretty conservative. It's not, you know, out of line in terms of us highballing it. It was analysis that we feel good with. We just moved Jacksonville Police and Fire last summer, about 5,000 members, got close to 10,000 if you include dependents. Moved them in this case from CVS Caremark or Prime actually is Blue Cross, to Express Scripts. I'm in the school district, St. John's, Express Scripts. Been very limited disruption.
Hope the server's okay.
To say that I'm talking too much, is that probably it, yeah. I knew y'all called something like that. Yeah, YouTube or whatever you guys call this guy talks too slow. But that's important. So when we did that one, they were already self-funded. So we were able to drill down to what's the drugs where folks would have an improvement other, and so you're just not able to do that. We feel good about the transition from Optum to Express Scripts, as Allison mentioned. And
the numbers are great,
and once we're looking at this again in 2 or 3 years to make sure Express Scripts is still your right partner, then boy, the level of detail you'd see, particularly from a disruptive. I'll end on this before we go to Ms. Gilhousen, is Jacksonville Police and Fire. There was so much savings, and not to set too high expectations here, they decided on the generic spend, there was a lot of opportunity for them to go up a few points. When you go up a few points on percentage points of generic dispensing rate, they call it, GDR, then essentially that saves the plan money. That offset the cost to go to $0 generic dollar copay. So they had $0 generic copay, which was a big win for obviously the employees and their dependents. Those are just other examples of things you can do in a self-funded environment if it makes sense. So go ahead, Ms. Gill. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Does this change where our employees will go to pick up their prescriptions, like their access to certain pharmacies? I know there are some pharmacies that don't accept certain plans.
Right.
Does this change their availability?
I think I would be surprised. There may be a couple of mom and pops, but I feel like there's really not really any disruption as far as provider network. Express Scripts is the largest in the country, so I think you'd have to try pretty hard. But as we move forward and we can get the information that we need to see that, we can definitely look at that closely.
On the big box retailers, we looked at though, right? Okay.
Yeah, and there shouldn't be any
There's no disruption there. On your fully insured plans, which may have, where the question came from, we're seeing United
make you pick Walgreens,
Right.
or no, you don't work in like that mid-market, Walgreens or CVS, you got a one-time you pick, you're not running into that here, but no, a good question. And there's a lot of education with this. I mean, this is the piece that I think if we move down this road from an open enrollment standpoint, and obviously other educational forums that we'll need to make sure employees can best use the plan for their households.
Just want to be able to make sure we notify them if there's going to be a change
Yep.
before they try to. I've been in that position using TRICARE.
Mhm.
I show up to CVS. Oh, CVS isn't accepting TRICARE anymore. You have to go to Walgreens, and my prescription's already at CVS. So, yeah.
No, all great questions, and I think Dr. Gutko's already spent this rebate money. Pretty good on going towards
But she'll show us down to the
helping
end.
Bryce with a roof for a new school or a gym or something. But no, this is a big piece, and they come in typically quarterly. There's a little bit of lag where the first ones comes in, I think 6 months later, then they catch up. But they've been Express Scripts really doing a good job.
Is the net
Yeah.
plan cost under the United Healthcare, is that the accurate number? Since you do have the two unknowns in there, or was that a larger number and it's even a bigger savings?
Yes, we feel it's baked in on their admin fee side. It's a little bit more transparency on the others. Once again, not to knock United, but we feel good about that net plan cost. What we do think, though, could evolve to the good is as you know more of the drug pattern and use, we think those rebates could easily ramp up, and annual savings be a good bit greater. This is a hot area. I mean, we get called our agency by all kind of companies, local, state, national, worldwide, that, hey, we can save 40%, 30%, 20% on your drug spend. And that's why that 25% number, that didn't surprise us. We thought it was at least there. And I know verbally before we did this exercise, and we're glad it came out like this because this is what we were saying to your team is, hey, probably between 20 and 30%. We could see, particularly with some of the specialty drug management, get up to 30 or 35 over time. So, okay. What else? What do we got next? Okay. Yeah. Good. You want to jump on? Bonnie, you're doing great, by the way.
So one more thing, just April, mainly for you on the pharmacy, they will call and say, United said I don't have pharmacy coverage. That happens a lot. So back to kind of looking at the stop loss insurance analysis, I know that Travis mentioned earlier, really this is one of those things that we kind of, I don't want to say take down to the wire, but the carriers want to see your experience closer to that 10-1 plan year start. But what we did is we did go ahead with the data that we have and get them to pull some illustrative quotes for you so you would at least have some sort of sense of what these expenses will be. Hopefully what we would anticipate is they might perhaps improve as we move closer to 10-1. But this is really small, and sorry about that. We actually always have trouble with this because what we'll do is we'll go out to a wide breadth of carriers in the stop loss market industry and say, here's the data, send us back your quotes. We only work with top rated, A-rated carriers. We don't want anyone who's going to go out of business, so we look at their financials and make sure that they're solid. And so what we look at is these different, so the dark blue kind of under that section is a specific deductible of $250,000. The light blue on the right-hand side is $300,000. So that's kind of where you are today from a pooling point level. So then we look at contract types, and there are a lot of different contract types that are available. But again, that's something that we counsel through our experience with self-funded groups. And working with the carriers and consultants about, what makes the most sense for you all. So when we look at a contract type, what they look at is, like for instance, we'll keep it kind of basic, a 1218, which is probably might be where you would land perhaps. So what that looks at is claims incurred in 12 months, paid in 18 months. So if you all choose to go self-funded 10-1, that 12-month count starts October 1st and ends the following September 30th. So any claims that happen within those 12 months are covered under stop loss. But if they are even paid beyond that, 6 months beyond that, so that's when the 18 months come into play, the stop loss carrier will reimburse the plan. So because if you think about it, a lot of large hospital bills or extended hospital stays, someone might be in the hospital 30 days, 45 days, and it really depends on the provider as far as billing. Some of them will do like an interim billing. Some of them wait until the end of the stay to release the billing. So if you get someone sitting in the hospital mid-September, if you had a 12/12, your plan cuts off the end of September. So if that bill comes in October, everything is started over. So we want to make sure that if that, gets paid outside of the plan year, that it's getting reimbursed to the plan. So that's one way that you, can control that risk. And I mentioned there are, different types of plans, and again, it will reflect in your premium. But there, we showed 1218, that's very popular. There are 1224 type plans. We did get a quote from a specific carrier that gave us a 1212 with TLO. So that's, even though it stops at the 12 months at the 930, it has a terminal liability option, which offers you coverage for within the next 3 months. So it's almost like a 1215, but it's called a 1212 with a TLO.
So I think with all these options, and it gets back, I know, with a lot of the questions, including from Ms. Carrickus, this is a pretty bulletproof contracts we're looking at, and versus now as you mature and we look years down the road, you may do something differently, but the one on the far left, you can see the total annual premium is less expensive than the 1218. 1218 is just a stronger contract. Well, what we'll do each year, and by the way, this will come back to y'all. This was shopped with your group, with a consortium we use that does a great job called Stealth. They've got good contracts, good presence across the industry. We'll come back, like I say, late summer or so, or maybe even October, August timeframe, and obviously make a recommendation, have this conversation again. We do, after that, market this each year, so we'll be through the insurance committee as well to the full board with results such as this, and it's obviously responsible to do that each year.
So the other thing we just want to point out, we talked about aggregate coverage, so that's kind of in that top piece. And so what we do is, we've obviously provided your experience to the carriers, and they look and say, what do we think your annual spend is going to be? So, like for instance, they're looking at your annual spend on the far left-hand side and the annual attachment point. Annual attachment point would be that spend that they're anticipating. So $32.7 million. So if you stay under that, you don't get any reimbursement from the aggregate coverage. If you go over, you have a reimbursement up to $1 million that's available. When you look down at the bottom, that goes into, okay, that $250,000 on everyone's head, that deductible, what are we paying for that? So they give you rates by tier. And it's cheaper for employee only. Obviously, the most expensive is family, and then you have a composite rate of $67.76, for example, in this scenario. So that would make your premium based on your enrollment $205,000 approximately a month for that coverage. Your aggregate rate, you can see, is $2.06. So we talk about how this, it's kind of a little extra. It's really inexpensive, relatively speaking, and it's only about $6,200 a month. So that would show your your monthly premium at $211, and then that annual premium at $2.5.
What's our current premium with United Healthcare right now?
Well, I don't.
$32 million overall.
But it's wrapped up in your premium, in your total premium.
So it's not, you couldn't give us the monthly on it.
Right, yeah. Okay, so again, this is based on your experience, but it is illustrative at this point, just because it's early. So they're gonna want more claims experience as we move forward.
So is there a recommendation that you think, as far as like the 12-12 with the TLO or the 12-18? So whichever we were to choose, whether it be the 300,000 or the 250,000, which is better for, a district our size as far as the claims?
Yeah, and we'll look at that as we get more, kind of see where your claims are trending. We'll really hone in on that.
The gut right now, probably the 12-18.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, that does give you the extra 6 months of coverage, after the plan year.
And you were saying that when organizations go to the self-insurance, they tend to go to the lower, the 250,
Right.
which was what I was looking at going,
Right.
That makes sense, because if we go too quickly or if something happens, then we
Right,
tend to be a little bit more conservative in that respect.
right, so that would
And I think
definitely
we
be
even
the-
looked at the 275, there's a whole 4 spreadsheets on it, we just showed these two
Yeah.
illustrated,
This is
but
good, yeah.
when we come back in,
Yeah.
we may even throw that option.
Well,
in
and
as well.
truly, I mean, between the 250, I'm looking at the 12-18 and the 300, it's $500,000 difference.
Mhm.
I mean, that 500,000 is a bit of change, obviously, it's
Right,
not
right.
small. So that, looking at that, that could help us make that determination.
Right, and we
Again,
will, and we can look back at your large claims and say, okay, what's the frequency that you've had these large claims?
Right.
And we look at that, and so what's that delta that you would have to have in the number of claimants to make up the difference in that premium, and does it make sense?
Mhm.
So all of those are factors that we look at, and that will, again, once we're able to kind of hone in and pinpoint these proposals, we'll be able to bring back a very specific options and recommendations.
Yeah, y'all will be more equipped to make a good sound decision once that occurs. We run it through a calculation with real data in terms of your historical high claimant information. It'll show, hey, here's how many hit this or what have you. Remember, your current pooling level's 300 grand. Doesn't mean y'all go a little hair under it, but we'll have all that before you.
But this just does at least give you kind of I like to call the sniff test of what it's going to look like, and what that expectation is.
And I know we're pushing an hour. We'll really move a lot quicker now. There will be some kind of rounding out of this from a totality of all these little pieces. You'll also see some very good data, not to skip ahead, I believe on 19, that'll show the actuarial analysis that looks back over plan years that really shows the total savings of self-funded or fully insured. This is a piece that we were not able to continue with United. One reason is it was a pilot program that's currently offered to those that are interested in diabetes management. We thought that it's had, in consulting with Aaron with United and Wellness, as well as Sheila and our team, we landed on what was a solution. I believe it's been vetted on the insurance committee as well, but Hannah, go ahead real quick.
Sure. So as Travis mentioned earlier, one of the goals was to make sure that there was as little disruption as possible to the employees, and we talked about the administrative fee, the breakdown, just making sure everything is the same with United. And as Travis just mentioned, United was unable to, if you are moving self-funded, unable to keep their diabetes management program now, which is called Level 2. And for one, it's a pilot program, and it's actually sunset, so no new participants are able to join. I think that, they're still kind of rounding it out, and you're unable, if they were to move forward with it, they're unable to use this if you have carved out pharmacy. So we wanted to find a solution so those members that are participating in the diabetes program are still able to have a diabetes program, because it's hugely beneficial to them. Ultimately, it impacts your claims because they're able to get the help that they need. So currently there are 40 people that are participating, but again, it's sunset, so there could be more participants, but they're not able to join. And at the last committee meeting, we had brought to them Livongo, which is another diabetes management program. And we had looked at that, but Livongo only offers like a finger prick little contraption that you will use. And level 2 uses CGM, something that you have on your arm. And so we discussed that in the insurance committee and decided that we wanted to look at some other options so there would be as little as change as possible to the participants. So we found Omada, and we went through a lot of vetting on this, and we had lots of calls with, Livongo and Omada, and just looked at what other large self-funded groups are using for their diabetes management programs. Most large self-funded groups do have a diabetes management program in place for these people. So it's $70 per participant per month. Currently, we're not really sure exactly what the cost is with United. It's just kind of baked in. But Omada definitely ended up being the better option that the committee voted on. It has the option, or not only the option, they actually get both, the CGM and the finger prick. They get a lot of other benefits like a scale, coaching, lots of things, and it's offered to type 1 and type 2 diabetics. So level 2 is only offered to type 2 diabetics. And the last time I stood with Aaron, we were kind of thinking, how could we gauge how many participants there would be if this is offered to level 1 and level 2? And Aaron was thinking, I know of like 125 people I could reach out to, but then we don't know for sure if they're going to actually join and participate. So a couple slides after this, we put a guesstimate of 100, and that ended up being $84,000 annually that you would pay for this program. But we think it's a great program. The insurance committee thought so too. We sent them a presentation with both and the pros and cons. But we think that Omada is a great option to replace that level 2. So again, the members aren't having much change and they're not losing that diabetes management program that they have right now. Okay, the next slide. The next slide is just showing the differences, some of the main differences of Livongo and Omada. And again, the insurance committee voted on Omada, so it's a better price and offers way more, and I think it will be a great solution.
Any questions there? Okay, this is, stand up here, okay. Page on you see that I was referring to earlier, it's 19 in my book, 17 up here, but this is where our actuaries took a look at in terms of what it looked like if you were fully insured versus self-funded. They break it down to a per employee per month basis. Pretty self-explanatory. Back when I mentioned we looked at this several years back, you had those 17, 18, it was right around that period of time, but the years before that, you might have had one good year, a couple ones not so much, and it looked like staying fully insured made sense. You can see the track record since then. While there's not a footnote that mentions this does bake in the impacts of COVID, both the good and the bad, so we made sure that wasn't an outlier that didn't inflate any of these numbers accordingly. As Allison mentioned before, actuaries, it's interesting, no matter which one you talk to, they'll all tell you the same thing as it relates to the number of years that you look back. They felt real good about this. Many times it's only a 3-year period. We did a little bit more of a runway here, and just feel good about the position of the school district. Now you may look back and say, well, golly, I wish we were self-funded a couple years ago. Clearly, you needed a good run as it relates to what you've seen now, and we feel like you're on very good footing. And once again, while this doesn't say it, and what we may do on the next meeting, providing this goes to your full board meeting, is we've got some good data as it relates to enrollment, where the enrollment went up a little bit in terms of some more lives, particularly the premium. It really shows you why these years here began to occur and where you're at now. And once again, that's the commitment that y'all made, and it's really led to where we are today. Any questions here? Okay. A snapshot here that we always present each year, and I know Sheila always appreciates the amount of comprehensive data here. You can see that go back 10 years or so, that looks at where negotiated renewals occur. You'll see some footnotes that even on some of the years where you got to something much more tolerable, there were some benefit reductions a few times in that regard. You're obviously on a pretty darn good run here the last couple of years, but you can see some volatility throughout. Okay, thanks, Monty. Allison, real quick here, I know this is important, but there is a OIR, we call it, Florida Office of Insurance Regulation with public sector plans. There's some reporting. We've already touched base with them in terms of the last one we did this to from the school district was Alachua County, but we kind of dusted off the playbook to see what they need in advance. It's premature in that regard. We feel real good about that. I don't know if anything else you want to note there in terms of that obligation.
Yeah, no, most of the time, so the requirement for the filing is at the end of the plan year, so you have 90 days at the end of the plan year to file. There is there'll be some pre-set up and, you know, just not so much reporting, but just saying, okay, we're Clay County School District, we're gonna be a self-funded health plan, and some things like that we do on the front end. Our actuaries work very closely with the Florida Department of Insurance, so they have all of those contacts and will, you know, hold our hand through that process. We try to take on as much as we can. We ask questions when we need to, and then we try to just make sure that, you know, we make that process as smooth as possible. Again, minimal work on the front end. Where it'll really come into play is at the end of the first year when we have to pull together all of the data and report those findings. And then essentially that comes back as a letter that says, yes, you know, your plan is funded adequately for your experience, and your plan, you know, your projection moving forward looks like it is fiscally responsible. And so that's kind of the process that we go through at the end of every year. They do expect 60 days of a reserve to build up. You know, first year, I would say, as long as you're trending in that direction, you know, and they feel good about the funding levels, you know, they're going to give you a positive letter. You know, I have had a negative letter before, one where they would not certify the plan. That's very uncomfortable in a place that you don't want to be, trust me.
What is the 90-day equal to?
So the 90 days of your current is,
32, I mean, probably.
yeah, you're like
Per month, probably what, two and a half, or about
9
three,
million,
yeah,
maybe
about right.
8 million-ish. Yeah. So again, that's 90 days. The IBNR is, again, that's if your plan ended. You have to have reserves sitting there to say that you can pay out those claims of people sitting in the hospital if your plan ended today. So it's kind of not real, but it is a booked liability. So 30 of that is really a booked liability. If the 60 days is really what they want you to have on hand in reserve. And so, like, again, I mentioned that I've been in a situation where that we did not get the stamp of approval, and, you know, we had to show that general funds were encumbered. So you certainly don't want to get into that sort of scenario. But, you know, when we transitioned in Alachua, we transitioned at a fully funded rate. And, you know, those first few years, we were able to easily build up the reserves that were required. So you just have to be smart about it. And, you know, again, I know you all make great decisions and would not, you know, cut corners on what you need to fund because you want it to end up in the right place.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, and Ms. Carrick's great, you know, very good question. We've worked very tirelessly, not only the last, you know, several months, but also with Ms. Finley, Ms. Lagoka, Dr. Lagoka, obviously Sheila as well, to drill down on that. I will tell you, once again, not to get too granular, but y'all start deductions, for instance, a month out, right? So in September, so there's some immediate contributions. Not to mention, there's a lag when you start the plan that your first few months will be far less, and will build up those reserves. So when we looked at it, we feel good about it. And I think the key we've mentioned, and we've discussed this internally with your administration team, including the superintendent, is you saw the savings on the prior slide. Someone that to me would be irresponsible, a group, but let's say they're trying to cut corners and you know, realize those savings immediately, you could just change your funding numbers, right? Say, okay, we're paying fully insured now. I just saw that, golly, I'm saving X amount of percent. You cut that funding, you know, let's say you keep the employees flat or give them a reduction, or, and obviously the employer, that's where you get yourself in trouble. So I think what Allison had mentioned, we always encourage, private or public sector, is keep your same funding rates today.
And we feel that works good since you got a flat with United anyway from a fully insured basis. And will help us, meet this requirement and hopefully then some. So, good question.
And I think we're kind of rounding it out now, so we wanted to kind of pull it all together. We talked about a bunch of different pieces and just give you that estimate. I know we discussed that some of these things aren't completely firm yet. They certainly will be, but again, just give you some sort of baseline to get that idea in your head of what to expect. What does this look like? All these pieces that we've talked about pulled apart. So that's where we've broken down kind of our annual estimates here with the admin fee, the express scripts, your stop loss, flexible spending, diabetes, your rally incentive, and then that PCORI fee, which you can see is relatively small. So about $4.5 million there is just a rough estimate of, what we would anticipate to be the administrative cost of running the plan for the first year.
And remember, these are the fixed, as you mentioned, fixed costs, administrative costs, then you have your claims and so forth. And any questions that came up that we're able to further inquire, obviously if it goes before the board at your next scheduled meeting, we'll obviously be present in case some other questions come up for y'all. We'll be at that meeting. Next slide.
So wait a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
You said these would be the annual estimated cost for the first year. So after that, do you expect those costs to decrease?
If you can. The administrative fee with United, got to go up a quarter, is it flat for a quarter a year, 50 cents a year?
It's flat for the first year.
Flat.
It goes up, I think, maybe a couple of dollars the second year, and maybe like $1 more the next year.
Yeah, it wasn't overly substantial. I will tell you the stop loss can, now, hey, after we market it and really can, firm this up, there's a chance that goes down some, but at least for this first year. Future years, rarely do you see a decrease in stop loss, but all the rest should be very fixed. So we won't see a whole lot of volatility there. One thing we'll do, moving forward into the school board meeting, I was making a note with Allison and Hannah, is trying to drill down the best we can on your fixed dollars today with your current United plan. It's a little bit difficult to do that based on being fully insured, but it's significantly more than what you see now. And this is one of the benefits of pulling it away.
Right.
Not to mention what's not factored in here is the rebates we mentioned earlier. So, good question.
And I will say it does fluctuate, but we do normally, looking at those administrative fees, like with United Healthcare, we will always procure a multi-year rate schedule. So we want to know what is that fee going to be 2 years from now. So we definitely always make sure we have that multi-year schedule so there aren't any surprises. And then well ahead of it coming up for renewal, we'll go back and negotiate that. But I can tell you just in my experience and looking at some of these plans that have been self-funded for 10, 20 years, there's not a lot of volatility in that. I mean, really, at the end of the day, the hit is in your claims, and that's where you really have to, try to manage the experience. Your stop loss insurance, I know that Travis mentioned could go down just based on our marketing. It could go down over time based on maybe, next year, we've got great experience, we want to bump it up to $325, so maybe our premium's a little less even than the year prior. So those things like that can impact it, but it's generally, you don't see any, this isn't going to go from 4.5 to 6 million. Like, you don't see those huge swings.
And that's why it's nice on the PEPM, because if you add, obviously Clay County's growing, if you add, 200 subscribers, obviously your total spend is going to go up, but your per employee per month should stay pretty darn constant. So.
And what did you expect for the pharmacy rebates? I know there was nothing listed up there because United Healthcare didn't tell you, but is there an amount that you expect that the rebates would be for this?
Yeah, so that was in there, 1.8.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was it the 1.8?
Yeah, about 1.7 million.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will say too, again, we mentioned that, these are going to be really conservative coming out the gate because you're not able to get that data that you're able to get as a self-funded plan. And I have also seen that as we get that data and we're able to really go in and make stronger contract negotiations, we have seen those rebates increase year over year.
They
Now-
can get over a couple $1 million pretty quick,
Yeah.
so.
Now, what the pharmacy, the industry does as a whole, we can't control, but within the microcosm of those contracts, we've definitely been able to get more aggressive as we move forward.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
the two pieces that clearly at this point, because obviously the district, or in this case an employer, has to make a decision to go self-funded, in this case, a few months before it happens, there's really two pieces that just aren't quite drilled down. We feel good about being conservative on the numbers, and that's the pharmacy rebates, just due to not having, but also the stop loss. Although both of them have been marketed, so they're real information, but in terms of getting the data, once you do go self-funded, once we obviously firm up the stop loss, I think it'll be a little more material and clearly exact. If y'all were sitting looking over that period of time we saw earlier, Ms. Caracas, where it was, $1 million difference in being self-funded or $2 million, it's a different discussion, but even look at it conservatively, being over 12 million, we feel good about where we're at, so.
Okay.
But all great questions. Y'all want to get into employee benefits industry?
How many districts are currently self-funded?
I know with us, we've got Alachua, Nassau probably should be. That's another story. They just hadn't felt comfortable or what have you. Nassau and St. John's and Alachua. Obviously, you've got a lot of small counties, very small throughout the state, but we could get that data pretty quickly. We might even through OAR will require to have that.
And of those, has anybody run into a problem? I mean, a majority of them.
Yeah, I don't think, the ones that I know of, there haven't been any that have, let's say, gone self-funded and then gone back. No one ever,
Oh my God.
yeah, no one ever goes
I know Mark
backwards.
Bailey always, I think he says none, right?
Yeah, I don't know of any.
I think Mark first did Green Power 30 years ago, and we've never had one that had flipped back.
Okay.
And I think one reason is we take a good conservative approach. We don't just jump when it looks like, hey, 1 hot year, 2 hot years.
Yeah.
And we think it's time, but it may not have been time 5 years ago for y'all. But typically you go all in, and we haven't seen anyone flip back. So.
Well, a lot of times it's based on size and volume, so like I would say, rule of thumb used to be like 500 lives and above, you would really want to look at self-funding as a viable option. Now, we have groups even smaller than that. Now, their stop loss might be, $25,000, they're paying a lot for it. But it does go a little bit lower. But in the public sector, I would say around that 1,000 lives and above is really where you start getting into, self-funded.
Yeah, Flagler College, a little over 300 subscribers, self-funded. Valancourt right down the road, although heck, they're over 500 employees now, but when they were at about 250 enrolled, they went into a self-funded product. And so it's, we think it's time for sure. Okay, go ahead.
I got one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you said we needed 60 days and 30 days, and that it sounds like it's a rolling amount because as premiums go in, it will grow. What is the initial amount that the board would have to put in to start all this?
So really what you do is because you collect those premiums, it's no different
It's
than
just all
what you
through
do
the premiums.
today.
It's not
Yeah, it's all through the
Like
premium.
4 million out of our fund balance has to go to that. nothing like
Right,
that.
so it's all, you hope that it just gradually builds.
Okay.
It's more of a gradual.
Yeah, and obviously Dr. Gutko can speak more to it as over these next several weeks or so, is that, I think there's still some discussion on what we do there, and it is, could you pop a couple $1 million in there outside of it? You could, but we feel good about where you're at, and I think she's still, of course, she blamed me last time we talked about this, about the legislature. What was that? I was supposed to check on for you? I'm a recovering legislator, not one. I'll tell you to call it. But
$15 an hour, I've got.
Yeah, the minimum wage. Yeah, so I think she was about to pop about $5 million in there when she decided that the state decided to meet the minimum wage deadline before, which I'm still a little puzzled at. But like I said, I'll give you a couple legislative phone numbers. And so that might have got in the back pockets a little bit of the district. But we feel good about that. And when you get to Bonnie, go up a little bit more. I know that there's a lot of reporting you'll see that,
just really shows that we feel that, we're positioned as your consultant to manage a self-funded plan. It does, we've talked about this, your team has been obviously realistic in looking at that, making sure that our contract allows us to, provide these services, which it does, but also that we've got the capability. So this is just some of the reports that you would see that are far more robust and comprehensive than what you see today on a fully insured level. Some of them are really things we've customized. Bonnie, one more slide there. And this is just an example one, not specific to you. We probably pulled this from another client, just for a client up there, but really breaks down a lot of that to the full board, including miscarriage inquiries, that how often, whether it's monthly, whether it's quarterly or whatever, you are providing updated, whether it's in a consent agenda or wherever, of how you're performing, just so you can see the trends and patterns and so forth, and be able to be proactive versus reactive if things for some reason got upside down for a period of time. But you'll be on with all the data that you need. Okay.
I have a quick question for Ms. Gann and Dr. Levetko. You two were on the team that went with Ms. Paiva and I believe Carol Sutter at the time. You went to Alachua County and you visited with them about their self-funding. That was a number of years ago.
2018.
And at the time, we talked about how we're not there yet.
Correct.
Do you feel that we are getting there? I mean, are we ready for this? Because you're the people that did that initial review. And that's, I've been sitting here thinking, how do you guys feel about this? Is this something that you've seen us progress to the point where we need to be?
I'm going to leave it all to the experts.
You like these guys, I know.
Yeah. I have full confidence in them. It's not my judgment to tell you what to do in the future, because I'm not going to be here to control it. But I have all faith in them, that they know what they're doing and what they're recommending.
That's helpful. Very helpful.
She's smiling.
Yeah, well, and Dr. Gutko is.
Pina colada on your fingers.
Yeah, well, I know we keep saying, put Terry Dennis in charge of it, especially if it goes bad. But if it goes good, it's Dr. Gutko. But on that note, I know she's interacted.
It's me too.
I know, that's what I mean. But no, I think clearly, and I'm sure that the superintendent, Dr. Gutko, and Terry have mentioned this to y'all, but I know with Alachua, with Alex and your position there, there's been an awful lot of discussions about not only how they're doing, but how they kicked it off, learned some best practices, or some ways they would have done it differently. So it goes without being said, and y'all know this, but your team, we would be here today at this position, not only going over this potential objective, but also they've just done a great job and asking the tough questions too. It's like a lot have been asked today, but while some of it is some things always a little bit of leap of faith, but we've tried to really minimize that. And if y'all know Dr. Legutko, who best I can understand wouldn't even buy the superintendent. She wouldn't even buy the superintendent a coffee maker.
No, I know.
She's tough. Yeah, she's tough.
So Madam Chair, if I could.
Yes, please.
First of all, a lot of work went behind the scenes, many meetings, probably 7 or 8. So I've seen this several times ad nauseum, and for the last hour and a half, kind of listened to it. I would assure the board, I wouldn't bring something to the board that I didn't think was worth the merit of looking at, and that's why it took so long from 18 to now, because our claims have gotten better. And also, you've heard Travis mention a couple times, your contributions as a board exponentially increased. I remember coming to my HR role for the increased contributions. That plus the plan designs to have more healthy people on there created the environment where this is a real possibility for our district, right? So for me, it becomes a risk assumption whether or not you are willing to accept the risk or not. That's really what it comes down to. I can assure you that I'm not a risk taker, and that I'm extremely conservative. So imagine Dr. Legutko and I in the same meeting, talking about this 6 or 7 times to kind of come to this resolution. If that's not a dynamic duo of conservativeness and cheapness.
Was Travis in on this meeting?
They went a long time.
I don't know what is, and of course, there are risks involved, and they've been upfront with the risks, but also the possibility of netting back some funds from that we're going to insurance companies, and that's really why we look at that. So it is true that you rely on experts, and certainly the Bailey Group has been a great partner. Hannah, Allison, and of course Travis and their work, with the district. I don't need to tell you how much I respect and I'm going to miss Sheila Gann. There's no doubt that Sheila Gann is kind of a rock of insurance, the very foundation of it. Many of us in the room, I know that I've had occasions where I've had to call for my own situations, and Sheila's always given, great customer service to everyone that's called her, and so we're certainly going to miss Sheila. At the same time, we want to welcome April Riley to the team. We know that April's going to do a great job and provide that same high level of customer service to everybody that we've grown accustomed to in Clay County, and so we welcome you. I will also tell you openly that it appears to me like the board, I didn't hear any negative comments, so I'm going to assume I'm going to place an item on the board agenda under the discussion for this board meeting for this topic to be discussed, because it is a couple-month process to get to the point where we felt like we're comfortable enough to come to you to say, here's what we found out in our investigation, here's where we're at, board, do you agree with this, and move forward, because then there's some other stuff that needs to happen between now and October 1st for that conversion to actually occur. I will tell you that she was shaking her head as she's heading for the cruise.
I'm thinking of quickly we need to, that we gotta move on our side.
How many new positions do we need?
I will tell the board openly that one of the things that I'm looking at is our wellness program. You have to invest in the wellness of employees. Healthy lifestyles matter, because not only is it good for the employee and their overall health, but it also cuts down the number of claims on the district, and it's a good financial thing to do. So we will be coming back to the board in later months for a position that would assume that, and some information there that I'm not ready to divulge publicly yet related to that, but that's kind of a plan for that. So I would just reassure the board, I wouldn't bring it to you if I didn't feel like it was worth the merit to do it. I will tell you, nobody's cheaper than Dr. Legutko. And so I mean that in a fiscally responsible way.
You are.
And so
We got that no button. Thank you.
And so we looked at it, and honestly, it took a little bit of, it took a couple times, right? Because when you first hear it, and you're seeing the potential of claims, right? Being fiscally conservative, right away you go towards the negative side of risk assumption. But then when you factor in things like stop loss and other factors that would be factored in, and then you look at the actuarial, what's happened the last 5 years, and of course you have to rely on the advice of experts, which is what the Bailey Group's brought to us. It seems like a good direction to go. So that's kind of my take on it. I just want to assure the board it was a lot of things to get to this point, but the most important thing was your continued contribution towards the plan.
Right.
And we'll have to continue to fund the plan in the future. Otherwise, it'll go back in a different direction, which we don't want to have that happen for our employees. I'll also tell you a big focus on minimal disruption. Right? We didn't say 100% disruptionless, right? That when you're converting over, particularly the pharmacy, there could be a couple of people that are affected one way, either positively or negatively in that process. There's no way to get 100% guaranteed match, and so just to be upfront with that. But I know that was a primary emphasis of the people that worked on it, was let's not have disruption for our employees, so.
And that is the most important thing, that their plans, it stays the same. And like Ms.
Static is
Gilhousen
awesome.
said, if, we are changing pharmacies, pharmaceutical company, we need to notify them, so that everybody's aware before they go to the pharmacy to pick up their prescriptions. So there's no surprises for anybody.
Are there any other questions for the Bailey Group?
Good job.
Not hearing any. Travis, Allison, and Hannah, thank you. Thank you, thank you. All you've done.
And y'all will see, I know we went probably over our time, there's a lot of ground to cover. These are just some folks in the education space and public sector. We serve only so many 4,000 or 5,000 person groups. One that's not on here is Jacksonville Police and Fire that I mentioned, or the diocese, which, have all the Catholic schools, BK, Bishop Snyder, all your K-12 as well. But then as you go to the next one, Bonnie, who we need to send an award to for her great job. These are just some other ones, particularly in the self-funded arena that I mentioned. Once again, you do see Jay Poffett on this one, Jacksonville Police and Fire, but you'll see some friendly names that have already gone down the road that y'all seem to be headed, as well as some regional clients as well. So just wanted to end with that, and we sure appreciate it. We're always here if there's any questions that come up later as we move forward with the school district meeting. I will tell you, Dr. Kim, you talk about prescription disruption, just to kind of handle a lot of his mental health issues. You know about, he does have 7 or 8 scripts that we are going to grandfather in. So we have talked to him about it. Sorry if that's a HIPAA violation. We'll end on that. Thank you all. You got it. Bonnie,
Awesome.
thank you.
Excellent presentation. Mr. Brodsky, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I apologize for not starting with you.
Yeah, no,
I was
no
supposed to start
worries.
with you, and I
No
was
worries.
just, wanted to get started.
Just wait.
So-
Enthused today.
That is exciting news. I'll attempt to go quickly through the agenda to kind of make up some time. Before I did that, I wanted to remind you of the Spring Park Elementary groundbreaking. That's May 6th, 10 o'clock. So make sure it's on your calendar. I also want to take the opportunity, please indulge me for a second, to recognize a 20-year service pin for an employee. There's great people that work in our district. I guess I'm going to take advantage of being superintendent and tell you about a great person that I work with very closely. Servant's heart, totally 100% customer service driven. I will tell you, superintendent gets all kinds of phone calls from all kinds of people. Sometimes they're not happy. The ability to disarm people and to instantly for them to feel valued and realize that the organization is going to take care of them is so important. And so, without further ado, I'd like to present this service pin to Bonnie O'Nora, 20 years.
Put a picture, if you don't mind.
Oh,
Yeah.
So long.
Yes, 20 years.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
One more, 1, 2, 3.
Did we all sign it on the, oh, we did sign it.
You get signed.
And I know she does a great job for the board also,
does.
but a great job in
Excellent.
in our office too. So we'll quickly go through this. The minutes for the board workshop on the 29th, this one hearings. Any questions about the minutes? Okay, number 2 is the out-of-county travel expenses for FSBA and FADS. Any questions there? Okay. Number 3, personnel consent agenda. There is one job description rewrite, and it's simply for the area manager and transportation to have their CDL so that they can drive the bus along with everybody else that's able-bodied over in that area. Number 4 is a renewal for our physicians and medical facilities. You know that each year we go ahead and have a list of physicians that are willing to do employee physical exams, and the list is attached. And the list is...
It looks longer, have we added to it?
We might have added 1 or 2. I will tell you that physician offices are not exactly excited about doing this service. They do it more as a service, and so we try to get it spread out among the county to come as close to Keystone.
Still
Yeah, and I
nothing in the
appreciate that. I
south
saw
end.
there were a couple of Middleburg ones, so.
Yeah, but it's, you know, you have to kind of beg people to do it, and so
Right.
that's the list, and so we feel good about it. Cafeteria, the salary schedule revision for cafeteria managers. Remember, we added a position for the intern for high school based because of the number of meals served at the high school level. The next one is K-12 academic services out of state and overnight travel. Okay. The next one is our agreement between Clay County and the Department of Juvenile Justice. That's an every year event. The next one is sort of related. It's our contract with AMI Kids. We currently have 43 students in AMI Kids, and they do an excellent job in some difficult circumstances.
Well, they won a $1,000 award today.
They got
which
an
was
award,
great.
yeah. Very nice.
Awesome. The next one is Lexia Letters. Letters stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. This focuses on reading instruction for phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, writing, and language. It's essentially to help teachers get their reading endorsement. State statute then required that for people who are having interventions with students would be required to have that. Next is near and dear to me. It's a proclamation recognizing May as Better Speech and Hearing Month in Clay County. You may or may not know, we have 58 speech pathologists within our district, 3,200 students served within that program, and there's a proclamation attached for that, for the services of those students. After that, it's another proclamation for Mental Health Month in the month of May. Next, we have Navigate 360 contract, which, you know, state statute requires instruction in substance use and abuse, the prevention of child trafficking, and also mental and emotional health education.
Can
This
I ask
helps us.
about one?
Sure.
Because I know last year we did one, and I didn't know if this was an app to go with it, or,
This is the same one that we used last year. This is a
okay, because the
renewal.
price is very different.
Yeah, this is just a renewal of it.
So this is an application, and it just,
No, these are the Suite 360 modules, cover those three topics: substance abuse and use, the prevention of child trafficking, and the mental emotional health education, which is a required statutory.
but it's an online,
requirement.
basically.
Yes. Next, we have proposed allocation changes for 21-22, and there's none right this second. And then for 22-23, you can see the movement of curriculum coaches over to teacher support coaches at the bottom there. It's an even swap. Remember, as we're restructured in order to provide more support for teachers, and part of the whole program that we introduced, I think, at the last board workshop. Next, we have our monthly financial reports. Then our budget amendment reports. Then deletion of certain items reports. Then there's a bid renewal, and the bid renewal went to New Dairy and Contract Services, Just Excavating, and Great Faith Cleaning. So 3 in that. Then a bid to be awarded. This was for small-scale projects below 300,000. At the bottom, there's a list of contractors affected. Next, you're going to notice a bunch of projects. I'm kind of proud of the number of projects and the increase in the projects that are being done. This one is for Fleming Island High School security lighting. This is to replace the low sodium lights that are there now with LED lights that are more efficient. Now, believe it or not, Fleming Island High School is older than you would think, you know, at this point. Next, the next item is S. Brian Jennings, same sort of security lighting there. Next, we have Ridgeview High School restroom renovation, similar to what we had done previously at Middlebury High School. Next is the W.E. Cherry Elementary School spalling remediation and roof replacement. So I was curious, I wanted to know what spalling was. Right, did any of you think, what is spalling? Right, some of you had seen some of the rebar that was coming off, the concrete was separating from the rebar, and so that'll be fixed prior to, in addition to the roofing that was there. So I know that was kind of an unsightly piece of that, so we appreciate all the efforts of our operations folks. Next is Orange Park High School's front entrance security enhancement contract. So the whole front office area, the way that the offices are configured at Orange Park High School, if you've ever been in there, it's one of the oddest things that I've ever seen. You have to actually walk through one person's office to get to another. It's kind of like, it's a very unnatural. I always feel weird when I go there, because even if you go to the restroom, you have to cut through somebody's office. And you're like, okay, it's kind of, so this is the last single point of entry, I believe, of the 42 schools that are done, and it's probably because it's the biggest and the most involved to kind of straighten out that whole administrative part and actually put the front door at the front of the school and be a good starter there. So we're looking forward to that.
And how nice that we can afford to do it.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you to the citizens of Clay County.
And next we have Middleburg High School roof replacement. Then that's followed by a change order for the Middleburg transportation fuel system. Remember, we're putting in those above ground tanks, but one of the things that needs to be added are those concrete poles to prevent you from running into the tanks.
Good.
And that's added on to this particular change order. And then the next one is the agreement between the city of Keystone Heights and over the Pecan Street closure for the bus lane. Then next is pre-qualification of contractors, and then that brings us into the discussion agenda, and so we'll add the agenda item to discussion for self-funded insurance. And that is all.
Awesome. Excellent. Any questions for the superintendent at this point? School board attorney remarks.
I do have three things that I need to bring to the board's attention, if I may. One, I need to let you know that the referendum, the 1 mil referendum resolution is coming before the BCC at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Ms. Fowler will be there, and I will be there to answer any questions that they have. I don't think that it's all self-explanatory at this point. I've dealt with all of the issues and questions that Supervisor of Elections had and that the attorney for the BCC had, so.
I'm bringing along Dr. Legutko's presentation in case they get into the weeds. But I can't imagine that they would.
No weeds.
So.
That will spark their resolution, which will then just go to the Supervisor of Elections, and it'll all be set in place for November for the general election. The second thing I need to talk about is on May the 5th through June the 2nd, there is going to be the ballot under the PERC order, which is the Public Employees Relations Commission. They ordered an election for the FOP to be decided upon by all of our police officers as to whether or not they will be unionized under the Fraternal Order of Police. That election takes, it's by mail. Everything will be handed out to them on the 5th. It's being advertised and signs are being put up in HR and the police department by Thursday. And we should have a result by 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock on the 2nd as to whether or not that passes or fails. There are really no surprises in that. There were no defenses in that. HR and I have worked along with the superintendent and also with the police department with Chief Wagner to make sure that everything was done in order, and it's just sort of a walkthrough. There's nothing surprising about it. The third thing, the adult community education and CTE and the superintendent and I and a couple of others have been working on a contract for an academy which Garber wants to sponsor. It would be at the Middleburg High School to start. It will be, we've at this point sort of tagged it the Garber Academy of Automotive Services at Middleburg High School. The contract that I've put together pretty much mirrors the contract that we put together for ViStar about 15 years ago. I've met with Garber again, along with several people from the district about 2 weeks ago, and my intention was to have it for the May 5th board meeting. I still think that it will get there, but it would be similar to the add-on that we're going to have for self-insurance plan. With Ms. Bowler's blessing, we'll add this on for the May 5th meeting. It's a really good program. One of the greatest things about it is that it will open up the door for so many certifications that kids graduating from high school can be certified and can actually walk out and make more money than a starting teacher, which is a bad thing, but it's a
great
positive thing. The second part of that is going to be the naming. The board policy requires that the school board have the final say as to what the name of the academy would be. And so at the recommendation of the superintendent, it'll be brought with a recommended name, which I again would say would be the Garber Academy of Automotive Services at Middleburg High School. But that way, each time that it replicates, as the ViStar Academy has done, it can be, we'll just change the at. So it'll be at Grove Park Elementary or at wherever. It's a really positive program. It's an exciting thing. I was really excited to work on it. I think the principal at Middleburg High School is excited about it, and I will try to have everything to you by the last day of this week. It's going to be a stretch because I've had to rewrite the contract and didn't get any input until a couple of days ago. So, but I will try to have the contract itself to everyone so that you can look at it. And if you have any questions about it, it's real self-explanatory, but if you have any questions, please call me. Because I can't tell you how much enthusiasm there is at Garber and at the CTE people, and those that have worked on it in the district are really excited about it. So that's all I have.
That certification will mean so much to the students. And they are going to be able to walk into an automotive shop and be certified in that particular product and be able to work like that. And on the same side, automotive shops need those employees.
Oh, yes,
So
and they're begging
awesome.
for them.
It's a win-win.
The starting salary for most of these certifications exceeds the starting salary for an attorney at the state attorney's office. So it really is a step up for a lot of people who walk out of high school into a $60,000 a year job, or 45 or 50 or whatever.
It's awesome.
And do we have something like that at Clay already?
Not this
It's not an
particular
academy,
thing.
So under this program, students would be taking classes after school. Garber would be providing the instruction because these are more advanced. Like a traditional ASE will get you the very bare minimum of repair. Well, if you've ever taken a look under the hood, it's a wired mess of computerized.
So this is offered after school hours. I love that.
This would be for 11th and 12th graders to go into this program, finish the certifications, and be ready for employment upon graduation.
I love that it doesn't change their academic trajectory, that they can have both.
And of course, for Garber, they're very generous to do that. And of course, I don't need to tell you, because you hear me talk about it every time, which is the labor shortage. It's out there everywhere. And certainly within the automotive field, there's also a labor shortage. So it's kind of a win-win. They would get a pipeline of qualified potential employees in the future, and we'd be able to provide that service for our students. So.
How many students will be able to be involved in that program?
We're thinking about 2025.
Okay. So a student maybe from somewhere else could come if they have transportation there?
I don't think we've gotten to that point yet. We wanted to go ahead and start the contract and move forward with the program.
Of course, if we have
Starting
more.
next year?
We're talking about many, many hours.
Yeah.
We're hoping to have this open August
Next
10th.
Okay,
So there's going to have to be some additional construction. Garber's going to put the bill for that. One other thing that Mr. Broska didn't mention is those people that are in those after-school hours are being paid $15 an hour or whatever the going rate is to work, to learn.
gotcha.
And then one of the things that they're looking at is over the summers in the future, if it works out that way, that it would be an auto shop that would be open during the length of the summertime. They expect that it'll become a self-sustaining proposition because of the need that's in the area and the need that's in the industry.
So to be able to service people's vehicles in the area.
But as they explained, it won't be something we can walk in and do an engine tear down because they want things that
Sure.
come in and can be back out in 3 to 5 hours. So if it goes into the early evening, then they can have it done and be gone.
And the students will be paid 15 an hour, is that what you said?
Well, whatever the going rate is for a minimum wage at the time, but I don't know that, that's what we're talking about.
Whatever.
I can't tell you a dollar amount, but they will be paid and it will be competitive and it will be something where somebody's not gonna have to say, well, I can go get a job at Dairy Queen and do this, or I can take a job that's gonna teach me something. They don't have that option. So,
Question is, can we afford them at the bus depot?
Really?
There you go.
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah,
There you go.
I don't think we'll be able to
Start with the
afford
buses.
this.
Similar to the HVAC people.
No, we'll be training them and hiring them.
I don't think the bus depot will be able to afford them, so
Well,
that's all I have.
and as an academy, if this grows, then the one at Orange Park may become
Right.
a or not a Star Academy, but a Garber Academy,
What a
depending
great
on how it
opportunity.
progresses.
There are 3 or 4 schools that have,
Right.
and the other part of it is it's gonna branch out into Collision, and so that comes into Clay High School and Orange Park and others.
And service the kids'
Awesome.
cars.
Ms. Gilhausen,
It's been a
comments?
great morning. I think we all enjoyed the Reinhold breakfast and seeing all the wonderful things that are happening across our county. People with servant hearts who work to make our community a better place to live. That was an encouraging morning, and it's incredible to see how far we have come as we watch this self-insurance presentation from when I first came on the board, and our financials were a struggle, to say the least, to see how far we've come from that. Like you said, Ms. Carrickas, in large part due to the support of our community. So it's been a good morning.
Awesome, thank you, Ms. Clark.
Yeah, it was nice to see all the involvement groups that you don't think about. And I was at a VAR meeting last month and very impressed with that organization. I think we had students from 7th to 12th grade and they were all superior. It was amazing to hear what their focus is, and 2 of them received $1,000 help towards their college.
Awesome.
Just-
Ms. Carrickas?
I'm very excited about the self-insured. I've been a fan of that since Ronald Paiva was pushing and talking about it and had the plan,
Wonderful.
showed it to us, and show us gone. And I think this is going to be a great opportunity for our district, and I'm glad, like I said, that there won't be, it'll be very few changes for employees, and it'll be a smooth transition. And excited about the Garber Academy. It just amazes me how generous the community is for our district. And we saw that this morning with the Celebrate Clay and the Reinhold Awards. And I was really impressed with how many organizations deal with children and the schools. And I think we all noticed, they were getting awards and receiving $1,000 or $2,500, which was just great. So just thank you to our community for supporting us.
Ms. Fuller?
Just a shout out to this week is Administrative Professionals Week, and I'd like to certainly to Bonnie, and we're so proud of her and all she does. And
Mr. Brasky always says there's no grass greener, and he's absolutely right.
Tell her that all the time. That's my retention plan.
And in comment to the students, McRae Elementary won one of the awards today, and I was so excited to see that. I was there on a Friday afternoon with our Elks Club, handing out some Christmas things for the students, and I noticed all of these Publix bags sitting there, and I said, what are the Publix bags for? And they were all packed just so nicely, and they said, oh, these are for the kids who don't have food at home over the weekends, and they can take them home. And when I heard them win that award today, it just absolutely filled my heart, because it filled my bucket as well as their bucket. So much that so many of our schools do for our kids, over and above teaching them. And that is huge. And between now and our school board meeting, I just have 3 quick things. We have our job fair coming up. Okay, I was gonna give her a shout out. And we have our senior career fair at the fairgrounds. That looks pretty interesting. It's a CTE career fair, so I'm excited about that. And that happens to be on May 4th. And as we all know, on May 4th, you always say, may the 4th be with you. And on that note, I'll see you all at the school board meeting. Meeting adjourned. That was for Jamie.
Feel better.
Thank you.
Got that statement.
Oh, boy.
And she's